All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Jessica Grant. I'm the Supervising Transportation Planner with the City of Santa Barbara. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project. It's the design kickoff meeting. Esta presentación está siendo traducida al español para Teresa Soring. Puede hacer clic el botón interpretación si desea escuchar la presentación en español. The presentation is also being translated in Spanish, so you're welcome to click the interpretation button. All right. With that, thank you for joining us on this rainy evening. The purpose of tonight's webinar, we will be spending a lot of time in the background on how we got here to the design kickoff phase. This is a project that with the community, we've been doing community outreach for approximately 8 years, at least, for this project concept. For some of those that have been with us for that period, some of it will be repetitive tonight. But we want to make sure that anybody new to this project has a good understanding of the background. And then we will go through of what to expect from the design phase all the way through construction, how you can continue to be involved and stay involved in this process. We will be answering all questions at the end. So let's start off on a little bit of background. Cliff Drive, which is this section here, used to be part of the state route, which is owned by Caltrans. It was State Route 225. It was Las Positas, Cliff, and then all the way down through Cabrillo. In the 90s, Cabrillo was relinquished from Caltrans to local control. And then what remained was the Las Positas and Cliff Drive sections. And there was a lot of comments at that time of how to improve Cliff Drive. One of the major improvements that went on to Cliff Drive was a road diet to remove one of the lanes. So you just have a north and a south travel lanes on Cliff Drive. That was in the vicinity City College all the way up to the Cliff Meigs intersection. And at the time, a lot of the questions were, well, why didn't Caltrans do the entire section, the 3.1 mile stretch of Cliff Drive between Arroyo and then all the way up past City College to Castillo and Montecito? And the question at the time, and what Caltrans was dealing with, was there were still congestion concerns at traffic signal intersections. And then, of course, once you proceeded north of the Cliff Drive and Meigs intersection, there's more complicated intersections. The main one being the Mesa Lane Flora Vista was especially challenging. And so other questions that we received at that time was when Caltrans did do the road striping improvements, why wasn't there other improvements done at that time, such as crosswalks or curb extensions? And a lot of it was because it was costly, but it was also that what needed to be done to the street required more than just painted lines on the street. Again, the Cliff Drive was designed as a highway, and so it was designed to be a faster street. And just painting lines wouldn't necessarily remove the makeup of Cliff Drive as it exists today. During that outreach time and with Caltrans and then later with the city, what we've heard for crossings across Cliff Drive was Santa Cruz, Weldon, and Oceano, the vicinity of Santa Barbara City College, Oliver, and of course, anywhere where there was a bus stop location as well. And so fast forward to 2013, and that's when our city council agreed to pursue with Caltrans the relinquishment process to, again, make Cliff Drive from state control to local control. That process took about a year, and it was completed in 2014. There was a couple exceptions that Caltrans still owns, and that's the Castillo undercrossing, the Las Positas train overcrossing, and the Las Positas retaining wall. That it's a very large wall that you typically don't see when you're driving along Las Positas because it's below the roadway. So again, in 2014, Cliff Drive became a city street, and so that became under local control to really start to evaluate it, to sort of change it from that highway feel to then more looking like our local street network. And so earlier on, there was requested changes, of course, to the Little Cliff Drive, Las Positas intersection to address the congestion there. There was requests on Las Positas to have sidewalks or a path, crosswalks again across Cliff Drive, and to slower the roadway speeds and to have better cycling connections. So some of the projects at that time in 2014 that were more developed was the Cliff and Las Positas roundabout that now exists today. That was finished in 2017. And then, of course, what you've just recently seen over the past couple of years that was in construction and became complete in 2022 was the separated multi-use path along Las Positas and Modoc roads. And just where my mouse is hovering over, this is Modoc Road and Las Positas, where the new multi-use path went in. I'm going to spend a little time on this because it will make sense for setting up for connections to Cliff Drive. So again, we have the multi-use path along Modoc and Las Positas. What's in design development right now is the county's portion of the multi-use path. Some of it has been complete from Via Senda to the city unincorporated boundary line. And that connects into the Oberon Trail to then get you out to UCSB Goleta area. What's also in construction that you might be seeing from the freeway is the connection from the Goleta area to the Oberon Trail. And then on the right side of this graphic that I'm hovering over right now is along Modoc Road between Las Positas and Modoc to Modoc and Mission is proposed to be a separated bike facility or cycle track. And then on the other side, we'll have a multi-use path from Oak Park going up to the Las Positas. And so how you residents from West Side or the Mesa coming over the Junipero Bridge will be able to connect to how to Las Positas in that direction. And then what you see in orange here is we're evaluating a potential multi-use path on that side that eventually maybe there would be a connection over to this path why am I mentioning all of this is just because for all of the Mesa residents, West Side residents can then, go back over into the downtown area and vice versa. So getting back to the planning along Cliff Drive, we did have meetings initially, again, with the bicycle master plan effort in 2016. And then we began to have really focused meetings in 2018 and 2019. What we heard during that time from the community is that the residents did like the restriping and lane reduction between Meigs and the City College area. Again, it still feels like a highway. And there was an interest of restriping the roadway similar to how it is from Meigs to Santa Barbara City College, but in the other direction, again, west of Meigs, as you go towards Aurora Borough Beach. And then a need for crosswalks. This is a very wide corridor, and to have a better crossing because it's in that 3.1 mile stretch. There's very limited crossings right now. And then, of course, to look at better and safer cycling facilities, slow the traffic down, and then look at better access, not only for Santa Barbara City College, but also to the elementary schools that are along Cliff Drive, and that's Monroe Elementary, Washington, and McKinley. So this is just a really basic graphic of what the improvements in the planning effort yielded. So where you see the street name, such as Fellowship, Oliver, Camino Calma, Salida del Sol, and so forth, that's where you'll see enhanced crossings. And then there's also the addition of some traffic signals as well. So where you see a traffic light icon that's brown, so Camino Calma and Cliff, the west entrance of Santa Barbara City College, and the east entrance or main campus, there will also be a traffic signal installed there. And then the red dash is where it will be a separated bike facility from the roadway. And it's a separated bike facility pretty much for the entire stretch, with the exception, and it's a multi-use path after you pass City College and you start to go down the hill to the Casito Montecito intersection, that would be a multi-use path in that section due to topographical constraints. And where there's existing sidewalk now along Cliff Drive would stay as existing sidewalk. During the planning effort, when we're looking at this separated bike facilities, there was a big discussion. Do we have it on both sides of the street? Do you have it on one side? And the general consensus was to have it on one side of the street. And the reason for that, residents felt that would be more of opportunity to see their neighbors, more for conversations, and more of a neighborhood feel. This is just an example of a two-way path. This does not reflect the exact design of what Cliff Drive will look like, but spatially, that's what a two-way path would look like. And then this is how it's separated from traffic, from the vehicular traffic. Again, plantings, all of that would be different. And then on the right side, then you would have some of the existing sidewalk. Sort of a cartoon image of that. And this is just like maybe a basic cross section across maybe some of the residential portion of Cliff Drive, where again you would have a vehicular traveling in either direction. These cars here just represent parked vehicles, and then you would have the two-way bike lane on one side of the street, and then followed by the existing sidewalk. Another item that we had talked with residents about was when you're riding along the path, what do you do at all of the cross streets? As a cyclist, do you go down into the road and come back up? And through community conversations, felt it was important to, again, with the concern of faster moving vehicles, to have raised crossings at the intersection. So a cyclist would basically be in their path and then come up on the raised crossing. And again, that's to have better visibility for both pedestrians and cyclists, and then also for the vehicles turning from Cliff Drive onto the cross streets, make it so they're coming into different parts of the neighborhoods at a slower speed. We don't have every single intersection highlighted, but I did want to highlight just one example of what we mean when we have an enhanced crossing. So this, for example, is at Cliff and Oliver. This was the section where I mentioned where we had the raised crossing across the intersection at the cross street. And then this is, again, how do you get residents from the east side of Cliff then over to the bike path? And so this would be pedestrian activated crossing, similar to what you see on Cabrillo or in the vicinity of some of our local elementary schools. We'd install nice lighting and all of that. And then again, in this particular example, there's the bus stop. We typically like to have the bus stops on the far side of the intersection. So as everyone approaches, we have better sight lines of the intersection. So given that concept, in 2020, we applied for a grant from the Active Transportation Program. That's a state grant program. It's really been a game changer for infrastructure that we've recently had for safety and active transportation infrastructure in the city. This extremely competitive program. We were so sad when we fell just 1 point short of the application. But we didn't give up because we know all of this has been, again, a long time in the process for a lot of residents, and we didn't give up. We applied again 2 years later in 2022. We made some adjustments to the application. There was one change, though, that during our outreach in 2022, upon further review, was an alignment change in the retail or service portion of Cliff Drive, which is basically flagged on each side of the Cliff Meigs intersection. So this was an example. This is the original project, just showing the path on the west side of the street. And in order to do this, and there was a history too of collision patterns in this area, and so we would have to install pretty hefty medians and limit some of the turning movements, which was not well loved by both residents and some of the business owners. And it was really hard because from a destination point and all the services that are on all four corners of this intersection, to just have the path on one side here, created issues, again, getting to very important destinations. So we looked at then splitting the bike path just in the commercial portion of Cliff Drive to either side of the street. This is a zoomed in portion. Zooming out, you would be out. The path would be separated on to the west of the Cliff Drive, our Cliff Drive Meigs intersection as well. This is sort of the cartoon image of what that would look like. In the case where the businesses are, we do have 2 lanes of travel right in this particular section. And then you would have, again, the existing sidewalks and then cyclists in each direction. This is what it would sort of look like in concept. This is just an example from Santa Clara Valley. And again, we would have our own Santa Barbara style of infrastructure, but this would be sort of what it would look like if the Mesa Shopping Center was on our right-hand side, and then a bus stop location. Here's another way conceptually to look at it, just again from a space standpoint. Design again would have more the Santa Barbara style flair to it. So happy to report, and for those that have been following the project, received the news a little while ago, but we were able to receive funding for this project, and we have 33 million for the overall project costs, with again the bulk of the funds coming from the Active Transportation Program. What was also exciting is we did receive monies for other projects within the city to have improvements along the Milpas Street corridor, just north of the roundabout, going up approximately to Santa Barbara High School and Cannon Perdido to improve the crossings there. And then also along Kyriel West Side and Lower West to have a lot of crosswalk and safety improvements and lighting. And then that cycle track that I was talking about along Modoc between Mission and Mission and Modoc to Modoc and Las Positas. So since receiving news that we received the grant application, all the money doesn't come at each right away. It comes in phases. And so we had the design monies come in this March, so earlier this year. So some of the first orders of business, because of the size of these very large projects that totaled about 54 million in grant funding for these 3 city projects, we needed to hire a new project engineer and planner. So we have done that. And Michelle Bedard, who's on the call, will be our planner helping with the projects. Alexis Flores as our engineer in-house, and I believe on our call tonight as well. And we also, for a project of this size, we did hire an engineering firm and in particular subs to help with some of the environmental studies, technical efforts, and really just to get us to construction level drawings. We feel like we have a really strong concept preliminary design moving forward. But yeah, we need the extra level of staffing to get this project through. And then we've also continued coordination with Santa Barbara City College. They're also looking at redoing some of their interests, especially in the main campus area. We need to make sure that our path that goes through campus adjacent and it will be on some of the campus property matches well with what they have envisioned for their new entrance. So again, in form, we have the concept, but what it looks like, that's what we're need to be working on now in the design kickoff phase. So I'll talk a little bit more about the aesthetics in just a moment. And again, with the entry to the Santa Barbara City College, we also want to ask for some resident feedback as well of there's going to be a big planting opportunity for trees along this corridor. We do have to, again, separate cyclists from the vehicular traffic. And so it's a great opportunity on the west side of the street to plant trees. But do you leave the north side or the south side north side of the street barren? And so we'll show a couple photos of what we mean by that. And then there's also been requests from neighborhood and some of the businesses to relook at the Cliffs Meigs frontage road. I'll show an image of that. And then connecting Cliff to the waterfronts, the Beachway, when that's the multi-use path that runs all along the waterfront. Between this Cliff Drive and the Las Positas Modoc multi-use path, all of this plays into an overall 30-mile route between Ventura and up to UCSB Goleta area. And over time, we're hoping that coast route becomes an all-age facility. And this is a critical connection within that route. So let's talk about design themes for this, and love to hear your feedback tonight. And if we will have the in-person meeting in a couple of weeks, so if you feel free to reach out then as well. I think, and we won't be deciding any sort of tree plantings this evening, but if we were to start just looking at the path, going from Henry's Beach or Arroyo County Beach, and then climbing up the hill, what does that look like in terms of feel? And we think it would probably be very similar to what you see with the Las Positas Modoc path now, because your open space adjacent, that it's probably maybe oak trees that are planted in the parkway, a little bit more of your organic feel again, because after you pass the beach, then you're right adjacent to the Douglas Family Preserve and Ealing's Park. But as you climb up the hill, then you're in the residential area. And so what does that feel? I think we want to make it, this is also, again, safe routes to schools, to Monroe Elementary. How do we make the route for students and families feel really comfortable and fun? Maybe we have some special stenciling for the cyclists within the roadway that maybe the kids from the school design, maybe there's an art contest, that type of thing. And then as we go towards the Cliff Meigs intersection, where you're in the more neighborhood service commercial area of Cliff Drive, maybe that feels different. Maybe it's, again, that's one of our sort of gateways to the Mesa area, and maybe that has a different landscaping theme than the open space area. And then again, as we move towards the City College, again, we will pass by one of the entrance areas to go down to Washington Elementary. Again, how do we make this route inviting for students and families to use? And then we're in the big sort of neighborhood in the blue area where we're back in the neighborhoods. And what does that look like? And then we'll go down towards the City College and then the McKinley Elementary. And I think the City College campus, it sort of feels hidden a little bit. And how is there anything in the path design or landscaping that really we could highlight more of the institutional feel for that section? And again, just to, again, make it easy, lower stress route for students, faculty, and staff coming to City College. So this is so the north side of Cliff Drive. And so right now, again, we're very landscape barren on Cliff Drive. It was designed as a highway. And so how do we make that more of a local street? A lot of our local streets in the downtown have this really lovely canopy for trees that helps with the traffic calming as well. So there might be opportunities for basically to have trees within the right of way. This is just an example, and we're not saying have this particular type of tree, but this is in the Lower West neighborhood along Wentworth Avenue, where we've been able to introduce some landscaping within the right of way when there's no parkway present. And then this is just some examples of what we're looking at the Santa Barbara City College. So this is the West Campus entrance. This would be a new traffic signal that would be installed here. Enhanced crossing. Again, this would be a path just right along the entrance. From an engineering design standpoint, this part is pretty straightforward. What's more complicated is the main entrance or the East Campus entrance. And so what we're proposing and what we've gone through in workshops over time is to have a new traffic signal at the East Campus. We would be moving the bus stop from the north side that's currently over in this location a little bit closer to the new traffic signal, so students aren't crossing Cliff Drive in this section. And another thing that we're working with City College on is, again, this will remain as it's a very popular bus stop, very well used. And we're also working with the MTD, our Metropolitan Transit District, as well. So when there's lots of students that get off the bus, or faculty and staff, that they're not just walking through a busy bike path. And so looking at designs for channelization to get the pedestrians over in this area, because this will become, it's off the screen, but that will become the new main entrance improvements there. Another thing we're looking at, again, it's residents have requested us to explore this, as well as some of the businesses. Currently, there's a frontage road right at the intersection of Cliff and Meigs. This is where like the Rose Cafe is, Taco Bell. It's currently a two-way street, and to evaluate it more as a one-way travel lane, and to have a new curb extension here, and to look at a sort of better circulation in this area. So that's another thing that we'll be requesting some feedback on as we move forward in the design phase. And lastly, once you use Cliff Drive and you want to, again, go to the multi-use path along the waterfront, or from the waterfront to Cliff Drive to get to City College, or whatever your destination is how do we make that a strong connection? And so that would be along Castillo between Cabrillo and Cliff Drive. So we're also, as part of the grant funding, we will be looking at the potential for a multi-use path on this section as well. We're working with our Parks and Rec team, again, to where we wouldn't be having any major parking removal or impacts to the actual park property as well. So that's another item we're exploring. Once we have more survey data available, we'll be able to share more information on that. So what are we doing now in the design phase? The consultant will be surveying Cliff Drive that brings in all of the utilities that are under the roadway. They need the survey too to make sure that all of the crossing improvements meet the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA. And then there's all the technical studies. So a common technical study would be doing soils, geotechnical work for some retaining walls that may be along the path, etc. We will continue to have community check-ins through this process. We, as I mentioned, we'll need to have some decisions on aesthetics. We'll have a courtesy review from the city's Architecture Board of Review. We'll be looking again at the City College entrance connections and the frontage road adjacent to Cliff and Meigs intersection. Our construction schedule at this time is estimated to begin in 2027. For those of you who've been following the project, I think some of you, including us, why can't this be built tomorrow? We would all love for that to happen. We will be trying to expedite the design phase as much as possible. And a lot of it is how quickly can we resolve sort of the design aesthetics and those other items that I mentioned. And then again, once this project goes out for public bid, we will work with the contractor to see if there's any time savings in that as well, because we do acknowledge that this is a long time community need, and we'll be working ferociously to get to the finish line. So on November 29th, there will be an in-person meeting. It will not be a presentation like we're doing tonight. Instead, it will be very similar for those that have attended these meetings in the past. We lay out the entire 3.1 mile stretch along Cliff Drive, just so you could see the layout, and then ask any questions that you might have and feedback. We really love resident feedback and observations, because ultimately that really helps us either affirm certain engineering improvements or to make any sort of tweaks along the way as we finalize design and get to construction drawings. So thank you so much for attending tonight's webinar. We really appreciate your time. At this point, I'll turn it over to Michelle Bedard, who will help us. I do see some questions already. You're welcome to type in your questions. We can also do the raised hand feature and unmute you. Also joining us on the call is Derek Bailey, our principal traffic engineer and acting streets infrastructure manager as well. So yes, Michelle, why don't you kick us off?
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. Yes, we have a number of questions. The first I'll go through, let's see, more of a comment regarding location of crosswalks is from Levy. Reads, the first proposed crosswalk west of Cliff Drive Meigs Road intersection across from Mesa Fuel Depot is located 400 feet from the intersection, while the first one east of the intersection, as Salida del Sol, is 750 feet away from the intersection. The significant difference in distance makes it more challenging for pedestrians to access the businesses on the east side of Cliff Drive, especially given the number of residents and businesses access from Lighthouse Road. It also poses difficulty for those walking from the fire station and church to businesses in the Lazy Acres Plaza. And perhaps most importantly, a Cliff Drive crosswalk nearer to Lighthouse Road will promote safe crossings to Washington Elementary School on Lighthouse Road. And then a diagram has been created, and we will take a look into that. Okay. Another comment, question from the same individual, Levi. Okay. Locating the crosswalk at Lighthouse Road, as shown in green in my sketch, would be a more equal distance from the matching crosswalk on the west side of the intersection, providing all pedestrians with convenient and safe access to the businesses and elementary school. So I guess, again, that's just more of a comment on looking at where we locate those crosswalks.
Okay.
And how to provide safest crossings for businesses and elementary school patrons. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you.
Moving on, question from Dennis Thompson, specifically question regarding the layout in front of the Cliff Drive Meigs Shopping Center, and asking if there's any change to car traffic at the shopping center. And asks, cars will be able to cross all 4 lanes like now, and mentions that that's a little chaotic. So what are the changes to that intersection and that in front of the Meigs Cliff Drive Shopping Center? Jessica, if you could open that, go back to that slide.
Yeah. And some of this I might be pulling up the drawings.
You want to try sheet 12, Jessica?
Sheet 12, okay. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just re-switch over here. And go here. All right, Derek, did you want to talk about it? Sorry, I was just making sure I had the right drawing up. Did you want to talk about the ins and outs?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it, and if you have anything to add.
Sure.
Yeah, and as Jessica mentioned in the presentation, the first concept that we were working off of was a continuous 2-way pathway for the length of Cliff Drive. So through this, the business corridor as well, it would have been a 2-way path along the south side of Cliff Drive. There were some pretty significant safety concerns with a 2-way path on one side of the road. There's a lot of turning movements in and out of the commercial driveways. And in order to make a 2-way path safe, one of the safety concerns with a 2-way path is some drivers may not be expecting cyclists coming from that other direction. So how do we improve safety? So the way you do that is to start limiting the amount of turning movements that can take place. And so that first concept with the 2-way pathway along the south side of the road included medians. And would have been a nice opportunity to potentially plant some trees in the middle of the street, improve the landscaping. But we heard a lot of concerns from the business community and from residents just about access and potential congestion and just being able to get to businesses. So we revisited that and we pivoted, and that's where the concept of a one-way path on each side of the road came up. And that way we could maintain the existing circulation, provide the bike connections, and as well how we propose to improve safety with this configuration. Jessica, if you can hover over the driveway on the north side of the road, the McDonald's driveway. Yep, right there. That's one of the ones that's especially problematic. That's the driveway, the first one on the north side of the road, west of Meigs. That's the one right next to McDonald's. Drivers that turn left out of that driveway to go eastbound on Cliff Drive, that's a really challenging movement. And oftentimes that left turn lane to go on to Meigs is stocked up. So we spoke with the property manager and owner for the shopping center, and we agreed that converting that driveway to force exiting traffic to turn right would be a really good safety improvement, just given the proximity to the intersection. As well, it should be easier to turn out of these driveways once there's a traffic signal at Camino Calma, because it will create some breaks in the traffic coming from the west. So there should be some better gaps in the traffic as well. So overall circulation should be easier through this area once the new traffic control's in place.
Great, thank you, Derek. And are you seeing, just so I'm making sure that, are you seeing the Camino Calma Cliff Drive intersection right now? I just want to make sure I'm in real time. Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Michelle, on the next question.
Yes, the next question from Lori Gaskin is, she's wondering, is it too late to advocate for the bike path to be placed on both sides of Cliff, that is along the full length of Cliff Drive?
I would think for the years, and we've had very targeted meetings on that, both not only from a community feedback standpoint, as well as our transportation circulation committee, and then subsequently city council. And so really from all of those levels, that was the larger community request, was to have the separated, a path on one side of the street, with the exception of the commercial area.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Lisa Blake. She asks if you can please explain how you expect cyclists to transition between the bike path with one lane on each side in the commercial corridor to the section with both bike lanes on one side.
Great question. Let me get to a drawing that let's go right about here, I would say. So this is so say you're coming from City College and you want to go to the Mesa Shopping Center. So just to hopefully everybody could see my cursor. So as you're driving north, then you would go to at the just of the Salida del Sol Cliff Drive. There would be pedestrian activated beacons to then get across and go along the bike path there. And if you forget to do that, you can also, let's see, at some point, hold on. It's right about there. Okay, so that is the crossing. Sorry about that. And then from there, so as we go, so this is again in front of where like Taco Bell is, for example. So you're going along, then you cross the Cliff Meigs intersection. Sorry, I'm just trying to manipulate our drawings. And then this is again in front of the Mesa Shopping Center. And then we get to the Camino Calma intersection. And then that's when, hold on, I have one more drawing to thumb through. Oh, I went the wrong way. Did I pass it already? It looks like I passed it, Derek. There we go. From the Oliver Cliff, and then you can get back to the two-way path. It's always hard with our drawings and in the webinar format, and we have a bunch of matched lines, and so it can be difficult to follow. I apologize for that. That's so that's why we have also the in-person meeting, and basically we have the entire corridor lined out. So it might be helpful to also go to the in-person meeting. So you could also see it and where it's not in particular sections. We do all these drawings that I'm referring to right now are also up on the Cliff Drive Vision Zero website as well, where it says project plans.
Thank you, Jessica. Next question, similar. Mary Woodyard is asking to please explain why a two-way bike path is better. She says the conversation reasoning is not making sense just yet. So
I'll maybe start with that one. Back in 2018 and 19, when we were really just starting to dig into what the community's vision for Cliff Drive would be, we showed a whole bunch of pictures of facilities that have been implemented in other communities around the country. And we showed, as Jessica mentioned, one-way paths, two-way paths, various crosswalks, all sorts of things. And we were really just trying to get a sense for, what resonated with the community. And overwhelmingly at the time, this is the type of image that really spoke to people. And so that's what we've been working on since. And with the exception of the business part of the corridor, where we've done the pivot to the one-way facilities on either side of the road, this is what we've been working off of based on that overwhelming feedback that we received earlier. So one of the reasons that somebody mentioned during one of the early on meetings is just having a two-way path increases the opportunities for interactions with other people, as opposed to if they're one-way paths and people are on either side of the road. So that was just one thing that somebody mentioned, but the main driver for the two-way path is just the feedback that we received in 2018 and 19 was pretty overwhelming.
All right, thank you, Derek. Next question from Mark Frazier was wondering, what is the maximum speed planners are hoping to achieve? I imagine maximum vehicle speed for Cliff Drive with these alterations.
That's really something we would like to get input from the community on. It's not something we can target directly. I'm going to use the example of what happened on Las Positas with the path over there. Prior to development of the path on Las Positas, the speed limit was 55 miles an hour. And what we heard pretty strongly during the public engagement and project development portion for that project was that speeds are too fast and they should be slowed down. And so, what's the magic number? And it's hard. We can't just set a speed limit in California. We can't just say post-project, we're going to set a speed limit of 40 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour on Cliff Drive. Because of the way state law is written. The state has some really specific laws about the way local agencies have to establish speed limits. And after the project is complete, we have to go out and we have to measure the speed that traffic is traveling. And there's a statistical threshold called the 85th percentile, and it's based on that 85th percentile that we have to set the speed limit. So, as we were engaging with the community and trying to get a sense for what's a reasonable operating speed on Las Positas, what we were hearing was kind of in the 40 to 45 range. And so that was about a 10 to 15 mile an hour reduction compared to the 55 mile an hour speed limit that was there before. So that's why there's medians on Las Positas. There's narrower lane widths. There's the extra traffic signal at Elings Park, the crosswalk south of Modoc. So there's just some features that have been incorporated into the Las Positas project that just provide a little bit more friction to slow people down. So while we had that target from the community of 10 to 15 miles an hour, we really didn't know how people would respond until after the project when we went and measured speed, and the speeds supported a 45 mile an hour speed limit. So how does that apply to Cliff Drive? The speed limit on Cliff Drive for the majority of the corridor is 35. We know that operating speeds are closer to 40, and there's some individuals that drive much faster than that. But we'd love to hear from you. What is a reasonable speed limit that we should be targeting post-project? Like I said, right now it's 35 on most of the corridor, 40 as you're going down the hill towards the Las Positas roundabout, and 30 as you're going down the hill on the other end. So we'd really like to hear from the community on that.
Great, thank you. Another question, Mark Fraser says, what about flashing radar signs warning drivers of excessive speed?
We would rather achieve operating speeds through design instead of flashing devices. That's kind of a fallback, but we'd rather incorporate good design elements to facilitate good speeds, because those flashing speed limit signs, they're really limited. We're talking about a 3.1 mile long corridor, 6.2 miles if you include both directions. So it would take an awful lot of signs to work, and they're not 100% effective. Some people actually just enjoy seeing how fast they can wind those signs up. So again, it would just be a better approach would be through design.
Thank you, Derek. Next question from Wally. The selection of trees should be not only on aesthetic consideration, but also for safety. How different trees react to storms and winds, branches coming down on the sidewalk and street. The question is, would the planting of trees from the fire station to San Rafael be accomplished during the burying of the utility cables? The timing of tree, can we time the tree planting at the same time as some of the undergrounding of utilities?
So I guess to answer the first part for the trees, yeah, we will be working closely with the city arborist. There is a urban forest program and an urban street tree recommendations as well. So we'll be working with the street tree advisory committee and Parks and Rec for the trees selection. We agree with you that ideally we want trees that are low in maintenance, that won't automatically pop up where then you would have roots within the path area to really limit that. And then also the types of, so you don't have a bunch of branches or types of fruit-bearing trees or those types of things that would be a safety impediment. So for that, as far as for the utility undergrounding, that is planned ahead of this project. The timeline, as I understand it right now, is for 2025 for the utility undergrounding work to occur.
Great, thank you. Next comment is from an anonymous attendee saying, this is all great, thank you. Can we please install pedestrian hybrid beacons at pedestrian crossings? These have been used successfully in Goleta and other places, do not cause confusion, and increase safety to pedestrians. Drivers react well to bright lights, but frequently do not stop at ordinary flashing yellow pedestrian crossings, even when the signal is activated. According to the USDOT, PHBs can reduce pedestrian crashes by 55%. Going on, says, can we please install pedestrian scramble diagonal crosswalks at Cliff and Meigs and each traffic light intersection along Cliff Drive? We will be unable to achieve Vision Zero with 2 legal right turn conflict points, even when pedestrians have a walk light. These would not cause undue delays in traffic, and to the extent they do cause traffic delays, the benefits to pedestrian safety will far exceed the potential inconvenience to drivers. There are many successful examples of pedestrian scramblers at intersections that are the same size and within the same number of lanes as the intersection of Cliff and Meigs. And makes a reference to see, for example, the intersection of Wilshire Boulevard and 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Streets in Santa Monica.
So to answer the first question, there would be rapid flashing, pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacons everywhere where you see a street name just on this exhibit. So Fellowship, Oliver, Salida del Sol, Santa Cruz, San Rafael, La Marina, Oceano, and then again with the addition of the traffic signals as well. So there's that. The pedestrian scramble came up quite a bit in earlier outreach, and I'll have Derek talk about that because it is, yes, as with anything, a little bit, more complicated. Derek, before you answer that question, for those that might not be aware of what a pedestrian scramble is, why don't you define that first before you go into the other detail of what you've analyzed to date?
Sure. And just to go back to the last question, the person was asking about pedestrian hybrid beacon, not rapid flashing beacons.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Easy to mix up the two. So for residents that are on the meeting tonight that have never heard of a pedestrian hybrid beacon, it's kind of a cross between a traffic signal and other types of pedestrian crossings. And instead of a traffic signal head that we're used to with red, yellow, green, 3 sections like that, there's 2 red lights on the top and a flashing red in the middle. Can you go back to number 12, Jessica?
Yes.
We don't have any pedestrian hybrid beacons in Santa Barbara now. They are used exclusively at crosswalks. There's actually an image of one there kind of in the bottom left where it says new PBH. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what the head looks like, that we call it the indication. And they have a little bit different of a sequence. And the nearest example would be in Goleta on Hollister. Mm-hmm.
Right near the Goleta Community Center.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There is a learning curve with these things. My city that I was at prior to Santa Barbara, back in the early 2000s, we were kind of an early adopter of pedestrian hybrid beacons. They were called a different name back then, but there was a learning curve with the public, and we found that the community started getting it more once there were multiple installations around the city. Right now, we've only got one potential location, this one right in front of the shopping center. We need something more than a rapid flashing beacon at this location, just because of the number of lanes that are crossing. So we still have to study whether or not a half signal or a pedestrian hybrid beacon is the best fit for this location. But right now, this is the only location that we're considering for a pedestrian hybrid beacon. The question about a pedestrian scramble, and for those that aren't familiar with what a pedestrian scramble is, at a normally operating traffic intersection, traffic gets a green light, and the crosswalk next to traffic gets a walk signal. So they're both kind of moving in parallel at the same time. With a pedestrian scramble, what happens is every direction of traffic gets a red light, and there's a walk light that comes on for pedestrians, and they can cross diagonally across the intersection. We did look at this probably about 10 years ago, just as the city was assuming control of State Route 225 from Caltrans, and it would have been extremely impactful for delay. So that we're quite certain of. Basically, the amount of time that it takes to cycle around and serve all the different movements, right now, it actually takes quite a while at Cliff and Meigs. If you can imagine yourself sitting at a red light waiting for the other movements to finish cycling. If you can imagine inserting another 30 plus seconds in there for a pedestrian only phase, the cycle length and the amount of time it would take to cycle around and serve all the different movements at an intersection like this gets to be pretty significant. And the amount of traffic that would start queuing up. And even for cyclists and pedestrians, if you happen to get there at the wrong time, the amount of time you would have to wait for your scramble to happen would be pretty significant. So it's not something being considered anywhere in Santa Barbara right now.
And you can have like a scramble at certain designated times. It's either a scramble or no scramble, because so that would be some of the frustration is that, you know, it's maybe 5:30 a.m. or maybe 9 a.m. on a Sunday where it's really light traffic. You would still have to have that scramble on at all times. So great and sometimes, but not so great in other times of the day. All right, Michelle, next question.
Okay, next question. It says, could we please slow down cars? Excuse me. Could we please slow down cars going down from Flora Vista to Las Positas?
Okay.
So part of the project is going to be reducing the lanes just west of the Flora Vista intersection from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction. If you can think down at the roundabout right now, there's 1 lane entering and 1 lane exiting the roundabout. So that's just going to be carried further up the hill, that cross section. We are going to be maintaining a center left turn lane just so there is extra space available in case there's ever an emergency or some type of evacuation that we need the extra roadway space. But under normal conditions, there'll just be 1 lane going downhill and 1 lane going uphill. So that should have a calming effect. There's not much we can do there in terms of like speed bumps or anything like that, or anything that is going to impede traffic, just because it is an evacuation route and it is an emergency response route. So we do have to be just mindful of how the road needs to function in emergencies.
Great, thank you, Derek. Next is a comment. It says, thank you for all of your efforts. This is a fantastic improvement over the existing state of Cliff Drive. In particular, extending this multi-use path along Castillo is a great idea to close a big gap in this protected route. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Next question. When would the underground utilities commence and be completed?
From my understanding, the target year for construction is 2025. I don't have an estimate on the duration for that, but if that person that asked that question can email us at the hold on, let me get to our email address again just to make sure I'm saying it correctly. It's the Cliff Drive plan at cliffdriveplan@santabarbaraca.gov. If you could email us and then I can get back to you on the timing for that.
Okay, great. Next question is asking, will there be access to Elings Park South while riding a bike up Cliff Drive from the Las Positas roundabout?
Yeah, let me. I think this is probably the best drawing, Derek, for the Elings Park South. Doesn't quite show it on the aerial. Maybe when we have it printed out in the larger version of it, but that is something that some of the residents that in some of the earlier workshops have mentioned as well. Would love to hear some more feedback for tying into that. Please note that, like, when we work on these projects, that a lot of times we're trying to get the mainline infrastructure in, and then over time we look to build additional connections. So for example, like the Las Potasitas Modoc path, where there's the open space adjacent, where there's like a bridge connection if you want to walk in the old Veronica Meadows open space area. So that's just one example of a connection. But yeah, would like to hear a little bit more feedback on that for visioning and connection. So thank you for bringing that up, and hope to hear more about that.
Great. Okay. Next question from David Leah. It says, I'm concerned about biker safety at the intersections. Will there be stop signs for bikers at every intersection? These really slow riders, and dissuade them from using the path. I commute using the Modoc Bikeway and have had frequent problems with drivers turning in front of me or blocking the intersection. I believe that the setup you use must prioritize the safety of bikers who are the vulnerable party in any car auto collision. Thank you.
Michelle, just so I'm hearing that right, it's just again for connections with the existing and cross streets.
Yeah, and
biker safety. So
more specifically, yeah, whether there's going to be stop signs for bicyclists at each intersection.
I see. So right now, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, that yeah, we would have stop signs for the cyclists at each of the intersections. I know in some states they have sort of the yield signage for that. But the other part that we have that I mentioned, and I might get to the other graphic as well, is the concept of the raised crossing at the cross streets, again, to promote better visibility for pedestrians and cyclists crossing at the intersections. And then we would have lighting as well. So as for vehicles turning on to the cross streets, because they're going into a raised, it's sort of like a speed table, that you cannot drive that at a full speed. So vehicles will be coming across at those intersections at slower speeds at the non-signalized intersections. Anything else to add, Derek?
Yeah, one of the things we've already been talking about with the engineering consultant team that is now on board is there a way to provide a little bit more of a buffer between the road, street, traveled way, and the bike path, so that there's actually a little bit more space for a vehicle to queue between the path and the traveled way on Cliff Drive, so that it's not blocked. So that's something we're studying right now too. We haven't landed for sure yet whether or not the path will have to have stop signs. It's our preference that it doesn't, just to keep it as free flowing and as efficient as possible, but we will need to make it safe. So I think we're not 100% there yet.
Okay, great. The next one is more of a comment. Again, it says changing the strip mall parking at the frontage road to a one-way exiting westbound to Meigs will be extremely difficult to turn left back down to Cliff. Better to direct traffic to travel east through the parking lot toward the fire station and exit to Cliff.
So Michelle, was that out of the Mesa Shopping Center or the
frontage road?
Oh, like the frontage road.
Taco Bell side. So they're suggesting maybe changing the flow of traffic, entering at the Taco Bell and exiting out at Cliff towards the fire station.
I see. Derek, do you want to? for feedback on some of those or initial meetings that you may have heard from the businesses and residents, as opposed to which way would you do a one-way on the frontage road area?
Yeah, no, we appreciate the input. I don't think we've been able to determine which is the best direction yet. There's definitely some turning movement challenges where the frontage road bumps into Meigs. So if you were to make it one way going eastbound, like towards the fire station, getting in there from westbound Cliff Drive, like making a U-turn, if you're on westbound Cliff Drive and you wanted to get in there to turn right around and get into that frontage road, would be really challenging. But on the flip side, as what the person that made the comment is, there's challenging turning movements no matter which way you do it if you created a one way. So that's the type of feedback we'll need from the community as we explore this a little bit further.
Thank you, Derek. And I think just to follow up, maybe question for Derek, but if it's as designed exiting to the Meigs intersection, would that be a controlled right only turn? There wouldn't be an opportunity to turn left.
No, it would have to be right only.
Yes,
and
so it'd be right only
even as it is today, it's really challenging to turn left right there.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Next question. What is the safety record in general for pedestrian activated crosswalks, such as the one on Meigs near Lazy Acres?
It's been very good in the city of Santa Barbara. We have 30 some odd intersections in the city now that have the rapid flashing beacons. Very low collision rate. One thing we have noticed with them is the wider the street, the less noticeable they are by drivers. So if you can think, there's a crosswalk up at Mackenzie Park on Upper State Street near the dog park. We've actually put in a median island there. So there's a flasher in that median island and a flasher on the side of the road, so that the distance between those flashers isn't too far apart. The flashers at the Meigs and Elise intersection, the width of the street there is about 50 feet. And so that's about the maximum that we would use the rapid flashing beacons. Now, most of the crosswalks along Cliff Drive, as like the one Jessica's showing in the image there, are going to be about 38 to 40 feet. So they're going to be a little bit narrower than the Meigs Elise crosswalk. And that's just because there won't be bike lanes like there is on Meigs. The bike lanes will actually be in behind the landscaping. So we've had really good success. And again, the one in front of the shopping center, that's a wider crossing with more lanes. So that's a location that the rapid flashing beacons would not be the right solution. So that's why we're looking at either a half signal or a pedestrian hybrid beacon.
Thank you, Derek. Next question. How will the signage at proposed new traffic light at Camino Calma be labeled? For example, no U-turn, left on arrow only, etc. Comment says, the driveway at Via Mesa complex already has drivers using our driveway to turn around. It is not big enough for a U-turn, so drivers must come into our parking lot and turn around. So, yeah.
That's something that comes further on as we get into more detailed design.
Okay. Next comment says, as I recall, the one-lane bike path on each side also impacted more parking spots, requiring removal.
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. Next question, planting additional trees on the north side of Cliff sounds good. Will there be an opportunity to continue the underground to continue to underground the utilities and removing the telegraph poles along the same stretch from Meigs to SBCC West.
Let's see. For the first question, for the trees,
It was just a comment. It was just
that was just a comment. Okay.
Trees on the north side of cliff sounds good. But then the question is, will there be an opportunity to continue to underground the utilities and removing the telegraph poles along the same stretch of Meigs to the City College West entry?
And Jessica, if you can maybe just talk about the limits of the existing undergrounding project.
Yes, so the limits of the existing undergrounding project would be Salida del Sol to San Rafael.
So that's approximately where the utilities go underground right now, near the church and the fire station. So that'll extend further east. And as far as extending that, utility undergrounding is really expensive. There used to be a program through the state where money was accumulated and could be used for undergrounding projects, but that program has been eliminated. So there's no longer funding being accumulated to do undergrounding projects with. So this is likely going to be the last one.
And again, just so I could visually, so those on the call can see it. Yeah, so Salida del Sol to approximately San Rafael. So right in this section right here.
Thank you, Jessica and Derek. Next item, the distances between crosswalks at Salida del Sol, Santa Cruz, and San Rafael are greater than any others east of Meigs. Currently, the curve in Cliff Drive at Miramonte is a point at which traffic is typically considerably over the speed limit. Please be certain that the crosswalk signals are at least as close to each other as shown, if not closer. Thank you. Just a comment there.
Yeah, and just while that comment came up, one of the things that we looked at when we were exploring crosswalk placement, we're looking at a couple things. Bus stops is a big one. When transit users get on the bus in the morning on one side of the road, typically when they come back in the afternoon, they're on the other side of the road. So how do they access transit stops on both sides of the road safely? So that's something really important that we wanted to address with this project. But also, like, what are the major entry points to the neighborhood and what are the major connections? And so the crosswalk locations shown on this image are generally where the major entry points are into the neighborhood. So that's how those came to be. But if there's a desire for something else or we're missing something, this is the time to bring it up.
Great, thank you. Next question. Has there been any thoughts to changes in traffic patterns along Camino Calma? What steps are considered for traffic management?
Say that one more time. I'm just going to bring up the Camino Calma.
Yeah, so the question, has there been any thoughts to changes in traffic patterns along Camino Calma? And what steps are considered for traffic management?
This project is only considering the traffic control at the intersection with Cliff Drive, and so that will be the new traffic signal. If by traffic management, you're talking about speed control, for example, the city doesn't have a traffic calming program right now, so it's not something that we're able to study and implement right now.
Michelle, real quick before we ask the next question, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know that We had a wrap up of approximately 7 p.m. Our team can stay on for a few minutes longer, for sure. But again, if we don't get to your question tonight, again, feel free to reach out to us at. I'll just hover over this again. Which is the Cliff Drive plan at SantaBarbaraCA.gov. We have multiple staff looking at the email. It's easier for us to receive correspondence through the actual project webpage because likely as you're not the only one with that question, and it just helps us keep track to make sure that we're being responsive to all the residents. So with that, Michelle, do you know approximately how many more questions? I just want to get an idea.
Right now we have about 13 more questions.
Okay.
Stopping point.
Team, are you okay on? Okay, perfect, great.
Okay, so we maybe stop after these 13. Okay. So next question. Let's see. Just a suggestion on the speed limit. It says a 25-30 mile per hour speed limit seems appropriate for Cliff Drive post project. So thank you for that. Another comment on speed limits, 25 miles per hour on Cliff Drive, please. Another comment, just commenting that there was a drunk driver that was recorded at 110 miles per hour crashing onto their property this summer. So yes, concerns with speed. Another comment, I would strongly advocate for a 30 mile per hour speed limit along Cliff Drive. Another comment question says, hello, this looks like a great project. What do you think are the important design elements that will make the path intuitive to use, especially where it splits and crosses over the Cliff Drive near Meigs?
That's a great question. I see, Derek.
Yeah.
And that's something that as we move forward in design and working with our consultant team that's also worked on similar infrastructure across the state is, what is sort of the best management practices in queue, and knowing that not everybody reads signs. So how can you design in a way to prompt for the crossing? So very much on top of mind for the design team for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, is a traffic circle instead of traffic lights at the Santa Barbara City College West still a possibility if designed with cooperation from City College?
I'll have Derek answer that. That was definitely in the early design phase. We had a specific consultant team hired just to evaluate the roundabouts in that vicinity. I think it came down to, but please add, Derek, is we did not have enough right of way to have sort of some of the traffic circles, but or roundabouts. And some topographical constraints as well. Derek, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, the big one at the City College West intersection was more topographical than anything. The arroyo that comes down from like Miramonte area down and crosses under Cliff Drive, where all the eucalyptus trees are and everything down in that area. It's immediately on either side of Cliff Drive right there. Cliff Drive, the roadway footprint itself is 64 feet plus the sidewalks. Just by way of comparison, the roundabout at Cliff and Las Positas is about 100-foot diameter. So approximately 35 feet larger than we have space for right now. So we couldn't expand the footprint just because of the environmentally sensitive habitat nearby. So we were really just constrained, and there just wasn't enough room for a roundabout at that location. We also looked at Loma Alta. Loma Alta had some other different kind of topographical issues where the uphill side was pretty significantly higher than the downhill side. And so that made that intersection infeasible for roundabouts. So we did explore them, but roundabouts take up a lot of room. They can be a really elegant solution for intersections at the right location, but they take up a lot of room.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Next question, request for a crosswalk at Allen Road and Cliff Drive. So
that's, thank you. I'm going to go to that drawing and hold on. Here we go. This, so the question was a crosswalk at Allen Road and Cliff Drive. That it was another highly requested crosswalk improvement. This particular crosswalk, due to pattern of collision history, this is one that we did receive funding from the Highway Safety Improvement Program to put in. Derek, if you could chime in on the time for installation on this one. I forget the year. I know it's coming up soon. It's been designed and implementation's coming soon. If you could remind me if it's 2024 or 2025.
2024. So we're trying to get this project out to bid by the end of the year. It's going to be packaged with some other crosswalk improvements. So it'll be constructed sometime in 2024.
okay, next. Can some form of advanced bicyclist activated sensors be considered to trigger the rectangular rapid flashing beacons as they approach the retail center crossings for convenience, to mitigate having to always stop at the crosswalks to activate and wait for motorists to stop? Ideally, bicyclists should be able to ride through the crossing rather than dismounting and walking bikes, but we realize there is a balance.
Good question. Having that type of setup where there's something more automated that triggers senses cyclists and triggers the beacons, it really requires the sensors to be able to distinguish the path of travel that cyclists are taking. So if they're on the path and they just happen to be passing by the crosswalk and continuing on their way, the sensor would need to be able to distinguish between that and somebody that actually wants to use the crosswalk. We don't have a lot of space at some of these locations, so I don't know that would be feasible, especially near the shopping center. It is quite constrained. But one of the things we're going to be very sensitive about is just making sure that when there are push buttons to use, that they're very easily accessible for all modes of travel. So if we do end up with push buttons for cyclists, that they're really convenient. Somebody can ride up right next to them, lean on them, and be in a good position to continue on their way once they've activated whatever device they're at.
Thank you. Next question, where the project plan shows half the path shifting to the other side of the street at Oliver, the path appears to change directions at a right angle. This would be very difficult on a bike. Is there any chance the path could be more curved here? I think you're on the right slide there, Jessica. But
this kind of gets to what Jessica was talking about a few questions ago, just how to make this crossing intuitive and convenient. So there is going to be a balance. We do want cyclists to slow down as they're approaching this crosswalk. We do want them to turn so that they're entering the crosswalk perpendicular to the road so that they have good visibility in both directions. But it is a balance as well for maneuverability. So that's something we will have to work on in design, just to strike that good balance.
Thank you, Derek. Next question is, do you consider motorized bikes to be bicycles or motor vehicles? Many of them now use the sidewalks.
So there's a longer answer to that. There's all different ratings of e-bikes, from class 1 e-bike, class 2, class 3. So there are differences of pedal assist, and then the throttle bikes. For this, when it is also state regulated, that the for a separated path facility, that it's regulated, should be a 20 mile per hour for the e-bike. So, and that's a class 1 and 2, but the ones that go over the certain speed limit, then it's the take the road for that. We could link, or if you send an email out, I can send you all of the regulations, state regulations for that. There's some great charts and graphics explaining each of those.
Yeah, and in addition to the way the state defines e-bikes, there's getting to be a lot of devices out there that don't fall into the definitions of e-bikes. They go faster than the state allows them to. So they really do turn into more mopeds or motorized bicycles, which are not allowed on bike paths. So,
and then the comment of sidewalk riding on Cliff Drive, probably what you see now is probably because a lot of people, our cyclists, don't feel comfortable riding in the existing on-street bike lanes, especially some of the younger riders. And that's always the cue that we don't have the right infrastructure. So this project would address that.
Great. Next questions, common questions to consider. Says, what about speed bumps and or more stoplights? Says, to me, it seems that speed is a big issue. So suggestion of speed bumps and or more stoplights to control speed.
Yeah. Speed bumps are not something that we will consider on Cliff Drive, just because it is an emergency response route and an evacuation route. So that's generally incompatible with one another. But one of the things that functionally we think is going to happen with this project, just because there are going to be so many more crosswalks and traffic signals along the corridor, is that should have a calming effect on traffic.
Mm-hmm. Great. And just 3 more comments here. So next comment, question. It's great to hear safer routes to school are in the works. Are there plans to connect this path to the 3 elementary schools and City College? Thank you so much for your great work.
Yes, is the short answer to that question. And I'll provide one example. Let's see. Here's well, let me bring the map down. So this is, for example, what you see on the screen is Monroe Elementary School. And that's where we'll be actually having the in-person workshop in their community assembly room there. So kids that live on the south side of the street will be able to cross at the existing traffic light, but say if they're cycling, we will have a new multi-use path on Flora Vista. So kids walking and biking can go into a widened path area here. We'll have improved lighting at the intersection, and also a median as well in the roadway. And then this is what it would look like as you approach the parking lot area, again, getting up to here and crossing right at the Flora Vista Red Rose into the school. That's something that we want to get some feedback too from some of the Monroe families, sort of what sort of the best transition. Is it right at that that intersection? Do we, we're looking at the design on sort of the best approach back into the school. So I'd love to hear your feedback for that one. McKinley will get a widened sidewalk area. And sorry, as I'm scrolling through the plans, this is McKinley Elementary School right across from Santa Barbara City College. We'll have some widened sidewalk in this area as well. McKinley is unique also because it has other entrances into the school as well. So some of our other active transportation program project that is putting in some active transportation improvements to the west side and lower west also has some additional connections in the lower west neighborhood as well. And then Washington Elementary, a lot of it's just having a path, bike paths for kids to get to the elementary school. Washington School doesn't necessarily follow, I think, some of the district lines for that. So you have a little bit longer commuters for that school. And so one of the entrance points is, down Lighthouse Road. But we'd like to hear more from the Washington families as well on those connections. Did I miss anything, Derek? I tried to summarize as best as feasible, but I think
no, that was good. The sidewalks that'll go up to Monroe and McKinley, they'll be widened sidewalks. We're going to try to widen them as much as we can within the existing right of way and maintaining the circulation as well. So I think the Monroe sidewalk should go from 5 feet to 9 feet, and the McKinley sidewalk will go from 4 feet to 8 feet wide. So should be much more comfortable.
Great. So next comment was just following up on the Camino Calma intersection question. And it just says, FYI, Camino Calma is only about 50 yards long. Thank you. And then the next and final question comment is really just says, comments, FYI, roundabouts are not pedestrian friendly. Roundabouts are not pedestrian friendly, and there are many pedestrians at Santa Barbara City College crossings. So again, just following up from that prior question about potentially a traffic circle at the entrance to City College. And that's the last questions we have at this time.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate those that still have continued to be on the call. Thank you for going 15 minutes over with us. If you're like me, I always think of my questions after webinars, and so again, we have our contact information here, Cliff Drive Plan at santabarbaraca.gov. Please reach out, or if you could bring questions as well, we'd love to meet you in person on the 29th. And if you want to look at the plans on your own, or maybe you have neighbors that weren't able to be on the webinar tonight that want to learn more about the project, then we have the santabarbaraca.gov /Cliff Drive provides information for that. All right. Well, thank you for again for joining us this evening. And from here, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.